You're watching Business World Live. I'm Danny Laurel.
And I'm Jess De Los Santos. Here are the biggest stories to kickstart this trading day, Tuesday. It's day one of Alert Level 1 in Metro Manila and 38 other areas across the country. And business groups expect economic recovery to get a big boost from the shift to the new normal.
Heads up, motorists. Another round of hikes in fuel prices takes effect today, and transport groups are now appealing for an increase in fares in public transportation.
Despite a series of price hikes in oil and other commodities, the Bangko Sentral expects inflation to have settled within target for the month of February.
Spacex in the Philippines soon. The government says it's in talks with Elon Musk's firm to improve internet service here in the country. We begin our broadcast with business groups expressing optimism that the country's economic recovery will get a boost from the shift to Alert Level 1.
At the same time, Trade Secretary Mon Lopez says the recovery story may also take its cue from the return to on-site work. Secretary Lopez says they're encouraging people to go to the office since it is included in reviving the economy. Coco Alcuaz, Executive Director of the Makati Business Club, is supporting Lopez's proposal. Alcuaz says on-site work will be a much-awaited boon to retail, food, transport, and other businesses. However, he admits that companies should still consider finding a way to incorporate remote work. For Alfredo Pascual, president of the Management Association of the Philippines, returning to the office will help address mental health issues caused by a lack of regular face-to-face interactions. Meanwhile, Philippine Amalgamated Supermarkets Association President Stephen Kua says the downgrade to the Luzes classification level will help lift consumer and business confidence. And finally, the Philippine Retailers Association sees the easing to more relaxed restrictions as key to the sector's recovery. However, a doctors group believes Metro Manila and other areas in the country are not yet prepared for Alert Level 1. On One News's The Chiefs, Philippine College of Physicians President Dr. Maricar Limpin said the public may become complacent and no longer strictly comply with minimum health standards now that restrictions have eased further. She also notes that proper ventilation is still not observed in some establishments and public transport vehicles. With these, the group is expecting another possible spike in cases under the most relaxed alert level.
I'm just afraid that we really was not able to do that proper preparation. So alam naman natin na in many of the workplaces, particularly yung mga air-conditioned workplaces, they should have actually consulted the experts, yung mga air conditioning engineers. So ito yung hindi namin nakita na nangyayari.
Meanwhile, the National Immunization Technical Advisory Group says some health protocols will continue to be mainstays under Alert Level 1. NITAG member Dr. Consorcia Lim Quezon tells 1PH's Sa Totoo Lang that the responsibility of protecting ourselves against COVID-19 is now on an individual level.
Kahit sabihin ng gobyerno na pwede na, ang ganito, ang ganon, nasa sa atin kung paano natin talaga aalagaan ang sarili natin. Siguro hanggat hindi nasasabi ng mga international health authorities katulad ng WHO or ng US CDC na tapos na ang gyera talaga laban sa COVID, we still need to practice yung pagsusuot ng face mask, no? Tapos kahit na sinasabi, baka wala ng social distancing.
Fuel prices climbed for the 9th straight week today, and transport groups are now intensifying their call for the implementation of fare hikes. Gerard de la Peña with the details.
For the 9th week in a row, local fuel prices are set to increase yet again. The Energy Department said supply remains tight in the global market. The agency says this is just the beginning as Russia's invasion of Ukraine drags on.
Because of the persisting daily production shortage, ay talagang nagkakaroon ng premium yung price per barrel. At tuloy-tuloy yan.
Oil companies advised that diesel prices would go up by 80 centavos per liter, while gasoline prices will increase by 90 centavos per liter. Diesel is now being sold between 52 to 60 pesos in gas stations in Metro Manila, while gasoline retails between 57 to over 80 pesos per liter. Jeepney drivers like Romel are left scratching their heads. What's going to happen to their usual take-home income of 400 pesos a day?
Pahirap na yung biyahe. Ay, taas pa po, sana itaas na yung pamasahe. Para kumita naman kami.
To cope with the non-stop oil price surge, transport groups filed a petition at the LTFRB for a 5 peso increase in the minimum fare for jeepneys.
But what is most important now is yung 10 pesos effect nila by within the week dahil talagang hirap na ang mga driver.
The LTFRB said they are currently evaluating the petition.
Masusi po natin na yung pinag-aaralan po natin talaga ng mabuti yung magiging consequence nitong mga hiling nito. Binabalanse din po natin sa yung balancing of interest natin sa kapakanan din ng mga commuters at ng domino effect nito sa mga goods.
The LTFRB said it has requested for the Budget Department to fast-track the release of funds for the Pantawid Pasada program, where 377,000 drivers nationwide are expected to benefit from the 2.45 billion peso allocation. For News 5, Gerard de la Peña, we are One News.
Now, despite the upward pressure from higher fuel prices, the Bangko Sentral says inflation likely came in within target in February. BSP Governor Ben Jokno said February inflation likely settled between 2.8 and 3.6%, noting the BSP's point inflation forecast is at 3.2%. This projection is well within the lender's 2 to 4% target band. If realized, the BSP's point inflation projection will be quicker than the 3% rise in prices recorded in January. Now, still, that would be slower than the 4.2% inflation seen in February 2021. All right, Dan, yesterday domestic sentiment overtook world jitters, at least for markets. Will that hold today, especially with some new economic data just in? Break that for us.
Exactly, Jess. Good news today and hopefully swinging the markets up. IHS market for the Philippines, that's the PMI Manufacturers Index for the month of February. That's at 52.8 from the 50 reading in Jan. You can see that on my Bloomberg terminal right here. This is the highest reading we've seen since December of 2018. And note, of course, that a reading above 50 is signaling an expansion compared to the previous month. And like you mentioned, we did rebound yesterday. I'm going to pull that out for you. And we continue that upward trend. We're up by 0.1%, 7,300 levels yet again, Jess. And this, of course, was the most in Asia yesterday after the announcement towards the easing of Alert Level 1, which is starting today. First Metro Investments, Tina Ulang says, we are domestic-oriented for now, and we have actually shrugged off or ignored the geopolitical risks, pricing instead the earnings and domestic growth. But you also have April Lee Tan of COL Financials saying that the market was up mostly because of the rebalancing of the MSCI. She says this is also the reason why we are enjoying net foreign buying. Take a look at that and how we've been in the green for the past week or so. And this is, of course, the 8th straight day of net foreign buying yesterday. Now, which ones were really bringing the fore here? Properties, that was up by more than 4% yesterday. Retailers gained. And we do have one that I want to take a look at. That is Meralco. Of course, Meralco's uptrend is really gauged on the reopening of the economy. The more businesses are open, the more industries are open, the more they use electricity there. And they did, of course, also report their net income for last year. 2021 was up 44% year-on-year to the tune of 23.5 billion pesos. This is on the back of energy sales. They're saying at least the volume has now returned to near pre-pandemic levels. Just there's one sector that I want to watch out for today. That is the financials. This as January bank net loans is also up 8.5% year-on-year as more earnings as well trickle in. The latest one to report is RCBC, and you can see that up by 40 centavos. That's close to 2% of an uptick as they report that their 2021 net income was surging by 41% to 7.1 billion pesos, just on the back of net interest income rising by 10%.
Well, then, other than the banks, retail also has some numbers backing that jump, not just sentiment. Tell us more about that.
Exactly, and that can be seen in the SM Investments, of course, the parent company, having reported their net growth or net income growth, 65% jump, Jess, in 2021 compared to 2020. They said that they saw a rebound in consumer spending, especially in the fourth quarter, in the run-up, of course, to Christmas as the restrictions were eased. Now, the banking segment, they've got BDO, they've got China Bank. That's 51% of SM Investments Corporation. BDO profits, of course, we reported that was up 51%. Property, SM Prime, that's a 21% profit jump. And as you mentioned, the retail business, which is contributing to 17% of the profits in 2021, that segment just jumped 133% year-on-year to 9.6 billion pesos.
Pausing for a quick break, coming right up. 2022 is a year of expansion for many companies in the country. And that includes real estate developer W Group.
We'll talk to their president, Norman Wee, to discuss what's in store for them this year. Stay with us.
And you're still watching Business World Live here on One News. I'm Jess De Los Santos.
And I'm Danny Laurel.
Here are the biggest stories from the corporate front. The government is now in talks with US-based Spacex to improve internet services here in the country. The Board of Investment says SpaceX, led by tech billionaire Elon Musk, is eyeing to offer satellite internet services in the Philippines through its satellite broadband internet system, Starlink. The BOI says the firm is particularly eyeing to provide broadband connectivity to remote areas where traditional internet is limited or virtually absent. Trade Undersecretary Seferino Rodolfo has met with SpaceX officials in November to discuss Starlink's plans to establish a Philippine-registered company that will be a wholly owned subsidiary of SpaceX. The BOI notes that amendments to the Public Service Act will allow full foreign ownership of satellite internet services in the country and will not require a legislative franchise for public services.
W Group is planning to ramp up expansion this year as it seeks to attract more e-commerce companies. The W Group is specifically eyeing to develop more leasable area for its warehousing and industrial business over the next 5 years. It is planning to further expand its office spaces in BGC and other business districts such as Makati and Ortigas, as well as in Pampanga, Tarlac, and Batangas.
To talk more about what's in the pipeline for the company, we have on the show W Group President Norman Wee. Good morning, Sir Norman. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning.
All right.
Thank you, Danny and Jester, for inviting me to your show.
Our pleasure, sir. Of course, W Group is riding on the e-commerce wave here. Since the pandemic started, you are at least expanding your warehouse and industrial space. Has this always been in the pipeline, or was this something that was born out of the pandemic? And what are your targets here, and where at least are you going to source funding?
Yeah, as a brief background of our company, W Landmark Inc., we are a boutique real estate developer in BGC. Mostly commercial buildings, offices, and a little retail space. My family started in the seaweed business back in 1969. They started as traders of different aqua resources and eventually discovered that seaweeds that we have in abundance here in our country had several uses. So they researched and discovered how to process the raw material into karaginan, which is a food additive used in food, meat products, pharmaceuticals, to name a few. We export 90% of our finished goods, so this is a big dollar earner for the country. During the great financial crisis in the US, back in 2009, the dollar became very weak, so our exports suffered. We needed something that will balance our revenues. At that time, we noticed that the BPO industry was still growing here. Despite the crisis, or because of the crisis, we found out that US companies outsource more of their backroom operations to the Philippines. So we looked at the opportunity to provide them with office spaces. We started our first building in BGC, which was an 8-story building, and we were able to lease it out in 6 months. So this gave us the courage to develop more buildings. Currently, we have 6 buildings in BGC with a total area of 147,000 square meters. And the 7th one in the pipeline with a leasable area of 22,000 square meters. Hopefully, we are set to ground break within the first half of this year. We are proud to say that we have a roster of multinational tenants that have trusted us to be their partners in the Philippines. To name a few of them, we have Citibank, Google, Cardinal Health, Willis Towers Watson, Japan Tobacco, Huawei, Bosch, and some of our local tenants. We have Globe, GCash, which everyone is familiar with.
Right.
Team Energy also, which is the biggest power producer in Luzon.
All right, Sir Norman, just to focus specifically here regarding your plans for warehousing and in the industrial space, What exactly are you setting your sights on? I mean, what are the targets here? What's in the pipeline? Do you have any specific schedule in mind and any specific location by which you at least plan to establish your warehousing and industrial space?
Yeah. Right now, we are looking to expand in the logistics warehouse space. The last 2 years, we have seen the explosion of online shopping, food deliveries, and e-commerce and the like. We feel that this will further grow and become part of the new normal. So we see this as an opportunity to provide these companies with the facilities that they need. We have started with a distribution center for Nestle in San Manuel, Tarlac. And we're looking at areas in Pampanga, Clark, Bataan, Laguna, and Batangas for possible areas of expansion.
Sir, I'll jump in and ask you about those areas. Why are you targeting Pampanga, Batangas, Laguna, Tarlac, Batangas? I've mentioned Batangas, but why target these places? And why not, focus expansion on BGC, where you've already well established the central business districts, or possibly Visayas and Mindanao, which also have some booming real estate?
Yeah, but BGC, we're still, as I mentioned before, we're still keen on BGC. We're building one more, hopefully within the first half of the year. But these are commercial developments. What we are looking at in the other cities are for the logistics and the warehouse space.
Okay, sir, let's talk about commercial real estate and this whole issue on hybrid workspaces. We've seen tenancy rates dropping during pandemic. To what extent are you looking at that going back to pre-pandemic levels? Do you have a timeline for that? And are you still betting on people going back to the offices in the central business districts and going back to those rental rates and the property prices that we had seen pre-pandemic?
Yeah, fortunately in BGC, we have a high tenancy rate, occupancy rate. Despite the work from home, I think the tenants that we have understand that they still need the office. Even if they do, Zoom or online meetings, they still need the infrastructure that they have in their offices. In fact, because of the social distancing, I see that they will need more office spaces because of this.
Okay, understood, sir. And still on the topic of office spaces, you are looking at issuing a REIT. Exciting times for that. Why go into that, especially since you have a lot of big players in the market ahead of you? Is there still liquidity there, to be mopping out? Are you not going to be taking that liquidity from elsewhere? And also, how much do you intend to raise, and to what will you be using those funds for when you do reinvest?
We're actually looking at all avenues for capital raising and fund sources. So REIT is one of them. I think the REIT here in the Philippines has been successful. So we see that as a avenue also for capital and fund sources.
Now, given that as well, sir, what's your outlook here for the rest of the year, especially now, given the current context that we're in? You have Metro Manila and several other areas in the Philippines already de-escalating to alert level 1. So how bullish are you about W Group this year?
We're actually very optimistic. With this alert level 1, we feel that people will, in fact, we've heard from our tenants that they're encouraging their employees to go back to the office. So this will help a lot of the retail, also the other spaces as well, not only retail. Schools are opening up, so people will hopefully, still with the social distancing. But I think people will now be encouraged to go out and spend. So I think the malls will also benefit from this.
All right. Again, thank you very much for your time. Exciting times ahead for W Group and for the rest of the country for that matter. Again, Norman Wee, President of W Group. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Now, the Defense Department maintains the Philippines is not taking any sides on the Russia-Ukraine war.
But in a statement to the UN General Assembly, the Foreign Affairs Department voted yes to the resolution condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine. What exactly is the right move to make? The answers in the report of mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez.
Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana continues to draw flack for saying that the Philippines should remain neutral in the invasion of Ukraine, and that because we're not near them, we don't care about what's going on in Europe. International Studies Professor Renato De Castro called his position absurd.
Country does not exist simply on the basis of interest. Very clear sa Constitution natin that we denounce war as an instrument of national policy.
De Castro said the government can denounce Russia's actions through diplomacy and without having to directly mention the country. On the other hand, international relations professor Ana Malindog-Uy said the Philippines shouldn't get caught up in the politics between superpowers.
The country, again, should refuse and prevent at all costs the possibility of being a proxy or a pawn of any superpower in their proxy wars.
The war has also raised questions about the implications on Asia, given China's close ties with Russia. The worry is that Beijing can one day invade Taiwan, just as Moscow did with Ukraine.
We have to be prepared for that because China is now getting, support, from Russia. Meron siyang friend to support China on whatever actions China will take in the Taiwan Strait.
Secretary Lorenzana has also issued a new statement, saying the Defense Department views the developments in Ukraine with the utmost concern. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez, We Are One News.
And that's a first look into the business day this Tuesday, March 1st, 2022. I'm Jess De Los Santos.
And I'm Danny Laurel. Mask on, wash hands, stay safe, Philippines. We Are One News.